The next component of digitizing the lab really falls into that collaboration, right? Being able to work across your various groups, being able to share out experiments, share out data, share out results that are coming from a particular instrument. And that's really a benefit that this digitizing really helps build out.
Yeah, that's so right now, when you think of lab integrations, quite often they're within a particular ecosystem. An ELN might have some integrations to some of your instruments, or an LIMS system might have integrations, but they really don't extend beyond there. We do think by creating this more this common ecosystem, now that report that you got, that data can go to Snowflake, your data lake, or it can go to an Excel, or you can automatically email it to somebody. That it should facilitate collaboration a lot more, and just make this data much easier and much more transportable.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny you bring up data lakes. Probably should have covered it a little bit in the system integration piece, because it's definitely something that we see today. It's very commonly brought up. Customers are very excited to build out these data lakes, work with vendors like Snowflake to really have this data available. What we kind of find, and what at least I've seen in the industry, is okay, we have all this data, we want to get it into a data lake, but then they have no idea what the next plans are. Once this data is there, that's something that we now have to build to. The importance is first having the data, but then understanding what do you do with that data. So it's great that you're kind of enabling and helping support and getting that data to the data lake to be able to venture out to the following steps.
Yeah, we get that same thing as well. Is that customers, I think, feel like they're missing something if they have all these workflows running in the lab, and currently a lot of the extra data that goes, when you get an HPLC result, quite often for the report that the LIMS need, they just need a p-kite out of that. But there's all sorts of other data in that, PK symmetry, that they may want to track from an analytics perspective, but right now they're just kind of throwing that out. Mm-hmm. And everybody's worried that they're throwing out valuable data that they could use to do predictive analytics, all sorts of things in the future. And so they're saying, okay, how do we tack on this ability to grab this data from all these workflows? And so that's something that we work on. It is tough, so I think that how do you format and make this data so that you can read it? And that's, I think, an evolution everybody's trying to deal with. But then once you've got it in there, okay, now what? Now what do you do with it? Mm-hmm. So we're really just trying to enable that, allow you, wherever you want to put that and establish that database. Snowflake's a good potential one. Will allow you to all your instrumentation to move that data, capture it all, move it into a data lake. But then it's an interesting question what you do with that.
You touched on the next step. It's not only just capturing, it's harmonizing on it, right? You have all these different systems. They're all capturing in different ways. They're naming every result a little differently. Yeah. How do we really organize this data more than just simply capture? Right?
Yeah. Some of the, things like Allotrope and Pistoia are trying to establish, standards for doing that. And within our platform, as data moves through something like an orchestration, we provide ways for you to transform that data into whatever schema that you want before you send it to your data lake. Sometimes if you're going to send a sample set to Empower, there's a particular schema that sample set, so we allow you to transform it to that. So we look forward to Allotrope and Pistoia creating these schemas and on ontologies that can provide this unification. We're going to provide the tool that you can easily modify your data to fit that schema and put it wherever you want.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things that we find is customers start to visit these kind of, methodologies a little too late, right? They already have all this data that they're capturing. Now that we put in a new process of how do we harmonize, how do we organize this data? Now what we have to do is go back and, organize the data that we already captured. So the sooner that you get ahead of this, the better it'll be, less painful, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to collaboration for another minute, another thing that becomes more and more common that we see is coordinating with external vendors, right? CROs, things like that. That ability to, so this digitalization not only is helping support internally within your own teams, right? Sharing across groups, but being able to venture out to some external users as well that you may need to capture data in a similar method that you would do internally as well, right?
Yeah, because ultimately DLX is a cloud-based solution. It really doesn't matter you within the company where the different labs exist, or if you want CROs to participate in this and to be part of your data exchange and allow data from their instruments to be published into your system. So yeah, I'm excited to see how we can improve that sort of thing. Pharma outsourcing is pretty common, but I know that is an issue. Being able to get all the data in a timely way back into the system is a challenge sometimes.
Well, you found a way to successfully capture through a firewall, so you should be able to work across various vendors as well. So, no, that's great. So now moving on to the next component is really process augmentation, right? Yeah. Being able to we had a process that we follow today, right? Maybe analysts run through their method, they hand it off to a reviewer to take a look. How do we remove some of these steps? How do we improve that process? How do we make it so that it is something that's a little more focused on the scientists doing what they truly need, right? We're reducing the amount of time that's needed. Things that kind of commonly get brought up are things like review by exception, right? Yeah. Having all these other components that we talked about first, right? We're doing these components in a particular order for a particular reason. These are the building blocks that are helping build to this ability to jump into the more advanced kind of areas. But being able to, going back to review by exception, being able to remove that need for a reviewer to actually log into the system at all, should your execution be automated successfully, no out of limits, out of specs, no things like that. Being able to check your executions and be able to remove steps of that process. And exactly what you're building up to enables things such as this.
Yeah, so that sort of review by exception is done now because things are so manual, and so there's all sorts of opportunities for misinterpretation. And I guess, the more you automate these things, the more you can put in these automated routines to check whether everything's been completed as you expected.
Yep, exactly. It's removing as many variables as possible, right? And the human element is a pretty big variable. So the more that we can automate, the less questions there are on the ability to expedite the process.
Yeah, which I think the next step that came after those ones is things like AI. Where do you think we are with stuff like being able to use AI in the lab?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So AI is, I think it's that hot term right now. Everyone's so excited for it, eager to jump in. We got ChatGPT that does a really great job, and it's so exciting. I think the reality is no one's truly there just yet, right? We want to be there. We have the desire to be there. We are heading in that direction. But we need all this automation, all this data in place prior to really being able to pull the true benefits of AI. AI requires a large amount of data, requires a large amount of automation, everything set up prior, right? Being able to do some of the things that you're talking through with like the orchestrations, being able to control the equipment, and being able to then have AI kind of learn when to orchestrate it, when to drive it. Well, it requires that ability to truly integrate with the instrument or system or whatever it may be first. And so the reality is, bottom line, most customers aren't there yet. They have the desire to go there, which is great. It's very forward looking. But that's what we're working to build to, right? And it's great that vendors are kind of building out to that space, being able to, again, put those capabilities there. So that's not the blocker of it. So what has Cytara done specifically with AI, and where are they kind of looking to head in that direction?
Yeah, we've been thinking about AI quite a lot. And, first thing is we have to get things connected. They all have to be speaking the same language. All these connected devices have to be discoverable. What they can do has to be discoverable. And that's really where a lot of the AI tools now can provide a lot of value. Things like ChatGPT. Right now, if you ask it a question, it goes against its trained model to find the answer. But there's lots of large language models that can be used really just to look at that question, deconstruct it, and you can give it tools to answer those questions. So we can give it our API endpoints to discover when somebody says, monitor a bioreactor and give me a summary at the end of the day, or if its cell viability drops below 80%, send me a note immediately. A large language model can deconstruct that, and we can give it the tools that it can go and say, what's a bioreactor and how do I monitor it? We can give it that, and it can actually do that. It can monitor the bioreactor and send that user an email at the end of the day with a summary. If cell viability is an issue, monitor that. So that's something we're really excited. We've made a lot of progress on that. And that's just going to be another way to interact and automate in the lab using these sorts of large language models and AI tools. A lot of people, when we're dealing with large pharma, they're uncomfortable with a lot of the ChatGPT and that. So that's something we have to be sensitive as well, and making it so you're not broadcasting everybody's requests all over the internet, that it's a self-contained model. So that's something that's a challenge we're working on as well. But I do think there's opportunities for AI in that sort of lab automation interface. And then the next level AI is the one we've talked about. Everybody wants to capture all the data, put it into a data lake, and then start to do machine learning and predictive analytics on that. That's another one that actually, this probably isn't something Cytera is going to get into. Really, our job is control, allowing the lab to be automated and connected to. We look to some of our partners and vendors to, now that we've got all this data, figure out what to do with it. So we hope that we're enabling, AI engineers and that to be able to give them the tools and the data they're going to be able to analyze a lot of this.
It's funny you bring up the kind of hesitations to move into AI. It's completely valid and real, but I feel like we just went through the same thing when we're moving to things like AWS, Azure. Moving onto the cloud alone was a fear one day, and that seems to be a fear that we're able to overcome. And of course, I think technology's kind of kept up to be able to ease some of those fears. But yeah, I think what AI is doing and exactly where the direction you're trying to go is understanding not simply what the system or instrument can do, what is the instrument actually doing and how is it doing it, right? And how is it performing against it?
Yeah.
It's definitely something that adds a lot of value and it's going to be able to help drive. I think the desire in the industry is really, okay, how do I take AI to the next level? How do I adapt and adjust real time? Running in a agile or waterfall approach, whatever you may be, okay, you're getting these incremental changes. What they want is this more real time, being able to have, flexibility, adjustments to their process, their execution, whatever it may be based off of the data that they're capturing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, maybe we should bring this home. So one thing that, our chief marketing officer always reminds me of, okay, this is all cool stuff, but ultimately, what are the customers getting out of this? This does sound like a big effort to do. What do you see that when somebody allows a lot of this stuff, are there tangible financial gains that you get out of improving your labs like this?
Yeah, it's definitely a large undertaking, right? And so the start point and the end point is exactly the same, right? We want to discover, manufacture, quality test drugs. We want to come out with data that's proven that. How do we expedite? How do we improve? So the value that you're truly getting is taking less time from the users, right? Being able to take the scientists, the reviewers, spending less time focusing on entering of data, capturing of data, movement of data, and more focused on doing the actual science, and allowing the applications themselves and solutions to be able to provide that value. So not only are you getting time, of course, time correlates pretty closely with cost, right? It takes a lot of cost with this big undertaking to get something in place. But once it is in place, you got to look at what's the true return on investment, right? How long is it going to take to be able to recoup that investment based off of what you're overcoming. Things like augmenting some of your process. If it's saving X% of a reviewer's time, how much of that time is now being able to spend on something else and being able to produce, which goes into the last piece of this, is a better, high quality product, right? Yeah. And that's really the end goal. Everyone's trying to accomplish the same thing here. And these are the tools and components that really help build up to that and really support customers in building to it.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing when customers implement a lot of this, and they're not seeing 10, 20, 30% improvements in productivity. They're saying, 5, 10x improvements. When you take a process that was manual, somebody had to transcribe or print something out, scan it, or take a SecretNet. We still see a lot of those processes exist now. As soon as things are connected, things just happen autonomously. Not only is it faster, but all of the transcriptions areas, the thing when you're relying on a user to do this, go away. And so just the process is tighter and people spend their time doing more valuable work.
And less siloed, right? It's really just giving that visibility across and being able to leverage everyone else's data within the organization. Removing those silos is a huge thing that exists with paper, right? It's a lot of effort to read through the pages. It's not as much effort to be able to use some of these tools to really access what you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you everybody for joining today. Thank you, Jeff, for your time. This was a great discussion. I really look forward to seeing if there's any questions or follow-ups, anything that we can help out with, but really just that understanding of where Asterisk kind of fits into this model, being able to work with the customers to really provide those resources to help implement, have that understanding within the industry, be able to bring those teams. And then, of course, Cytera adding to that capability, adding the software solutions that we need to be able to accomplish the true end goal of digitalization. So,
thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.